It started with a clue, not the clue you're thinking, not a hint or a lead. No, it was a literal ball of thread. In ancient Greek mythology, Theseus ventured into the labyrinth to slay the Minotaur. But how to find his way back? Well, Ariadne handed him a clue, CLEW, which was a ball of yarn, that he used to unravel as he went deeper in the maze. That thread was his lifeline, his way out. And that clue became our clue. Centuries later, clue no longer refers to a ball of yarn. Instead, it's what you desperately hope for when your keys are missing or when your murder mystery board game gets a little too intense. That word has changed, not just in spelling, but in soul. And it's not alone. Our language is full of terms that began as something completely different. Some lost their dignity, some gained it, and some just fizzled out. So let's pull the thread. Welcome back to Lexiconned, the podcast where language gets caught red-handed changing its story. I'm your host TJ, and today we're diving into a dozen everyday words that have undergone identity crisis. Words that used to mean something entirely different. Some of them have evolved with grace, others took a hard left turn, but either way, their stories are worth unraveling. So let's start with alcohol, a word you probably encountered last weekend. Today it means wine and spirits, but it began in the Islamic Golden Age, where Arabic alchemists used the word alcohol to describe a powdered cosmetic, antimony, that was used for eyeliner. The term entered medieval Latin as alcohol around the 1300s, and it still meant fine powder. Then by the 1500s, it had broadened to mean any distilled substance, and by the 1600s, English speakers were using it to describe intoxicating liquids. Eventually, it came to mean the distilled spirit itself, and now it's shorthand for everything from mules to martinis. Another strange shift is the word sarcasm. Now today it means witty or dry humor, but the root word is Greek sarkasian, which meant to tear flesh, and that's how visceral it was. During the late 1500s and into the 1600s, the English adopted the word through rhetorical studies in literature. Now the literal tearing shifted to metaphorical cutting, and that kind of humor that hurts if you think about it too long. So by Shakespeare's time, sarcasm was a known device. It's the same as we think of it as today, but it's still not something you'd want thrown your way. And next up, it's salary. You earn one, you hope for a bigger one. But now imagine getting paid in salt. You see, the Latin word salarium referred to money given to Roman soldiers to buy salt, or were paid directly in salt because it was such a crucial commodity. Now this term existed as early as the 1st century, but as salt lost its elite status, the word salarium stuck around, and by the Middle Ages, it became a general term for wages. And this is where we also get the expression, not worth his salt. It comes from the idea that someone's poor performance or their effort isn't worthy of the pay that they're being given. Now let's talk about avocados. Delicious on toast, rich in healthy fats, and originally named after testicles. Yep. Its name comes from the Nahuatl word ahuactl, meaning testicle. That's right. The Aztecs didn't just observe the fruit, they named it, likely due to its shape and how they hang. Now, Spanish colonizers adapted the word to aguacate in the 1500s, and then by the 18th century, English speakers had twisted aguacate into avocado, a word that sounds smooth, green, and uncontroversial until you trace its roots. Now, to continue on the origin of food words, we move to the word meat. In Old English, meat was spelled M-E-T-E, and it simply meant any food. Bread was meat, vegetables were meat, fruit was meat.
No, can't be that either, right? Because how can you have any pudding if you don't eat your meat? Right? This is the Pink Floyd thing.
But the change of reference to only animal flesh began in around the 1200s and became solidified in the 1400s as English speakers needed more precise words for different food types. Interestingly, the idiom meat and drink is based on the original meaning, which would have constituted an entire meal. Now, our next word has origins that you may not have learned in your gender studies class. Girl. It didn't always mean young female. In Middle English, think the 12 and 1300s, girl was spelled Gyrl, and it referred to any young person, regardless of gender. Then, over the 14 and 1500s, the term gradually narrowed to refer only to female children. Cultural shifts locked that meaning into place, and today the term is soaked with assumptions about age, behavior, even status. So what began as a generic child became a gendered label with complex connotations. Now let's have a moment of reverence for awful, because that's exactly what it once meant, something that was worthy of awe. A cathedral was awful. A monarch's decree? Awful. But the line between awe and fear blurred somewhere around the 1600s. Then by the 1800s, awful took on a negative sense. It wasn't awe-inspiring anymore. It was just bad. And it's a textbook case of semantic drift, a beautiful fall from grace. And that same fall applies, though much more rapidly, to the word egregious. In Latin, egregious meant outstanding, literally standing out from the flock. But by the mid-1500s, English speakers, much like middle schoolers, decided that standing out was a bad thing, and it took on its modern meaning of something outstandingly bad. It's a stunning reversal, from exemplary to shameful in under a century. Now for artificial. In the 1400s, this word meant crafted with skill or crafted with art. It came from the Latin word artificalis and was used to praise artistry. But over the next few centuries, particularly with the rise of industrialization in the 1700s, artificial took on a colder tone, becoming synonymous with imitation, cheapness, and deception. No longer skillful, just synthetic. And another word that really fell from grace? Silly. Its Old English ancestor, selig, meant happy or blessed. In the 1000s, selig was a term of joy. By the 1300s, selig became sili, and it had softened to mean innocent. That understanding of innocence eventually turned into gullible, and gullible turned into foolish. And by the 1600s, silly had completed its descent into harmless absurdity. A 600-year fall from sanctity to stupidity. And finally, fizzle. It's light, it's anticlimactic, but it began with a sound. In the 1500s, to fizzle meant to pass gas quietly. Yep, this word was Elizabethan slang for a stealthy toot. Over the next few centuries, that soft, undramatic ending became metaphorical, and by the 1800s, fizzle meant to sputter out weakly, like a firecracker that never explodes or a plan that never launched. And now, you can thank Lexiconned for this important fart fact. So from testicle-shaped fruits to salaries once paid in salt, the words we toss around every day carry centuries of transformation. They've been polished, distorted, softened, or hardened to reflect us, our humor, our fears, our inventions, and our pretensions. Sometimes the meaning narrows, sometimes the meaning broadens, and sometimes they flip completely upside down. But every time, they carry with them the fingerprints of the people who used them. So the next time someone calls your idea silly, just smile and think you're being blessed. And if a project fizzles out, know that once upon a time, that phrase describes something far more personal. Language is messy, alive, and deeply human. And here at Lexiconned, we're just trying to keep up, one word at a time. That's it for this episode of Lexiconned. If you enjoyed today's twisty tales of shifting meanings, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. It helps us stay on the right track, even when the words don't. And tune in next week as we continue to explore the essence of everyday language. As always, Lexiconned is written, recorded, and produced by me, your Logophile companion, TJ Martin. Sources and additional credits are in the show notes. Thanks for listening.